everyone. I want to talk to the girl who gave everything, her love, her time, her heart, and ended up empty. Not because she wasn't enough, but because she forgot that she already was. This isn't a story about heartbreak. It's a story about healing. There. It's about a woman who thought she lost someone, but in that quiet, in that pain, in that storm, she realized she had finally found herself. She found the version of her that didn't need approval. The version that smiled without pretending. The one who stopped shrinking just to be loved. And just to be loved. She didn't break. She bloomed. She cried. Not once, not twice, but in waves. The kind of crying that steals your breath, that makes your chest feel like it's collapsing. She cried when no one was watching, when her friends thought she was fine, when the world kept spinning like nothing had happened. But here's the truth she discovered. Every single tear was a message. Every breakdown was a quiet breakthrough. At first, she thought she was breaking apart, but really, she was breaking open, because pain doesn't mean you're weak. Pain doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. Yeah. It just means you felt deeply, that you loved with your whole heart. And that's not something to be ashamed of. That's power. That's honesty. That's real. In those moments when she thought she had nothing left, she began to hear a whisper inside, a voice she had forgotten. It didn't speak loudly. It spoke loud. It didn't beg to be heard. It was soft, but it said, "You're still here, still standing," and that means something. She didn't need to erase the pain. She just needed to move through it, feel it, honor it, because every single time she did, she came back a little stronger, a little wiser, a little more herself. And eventually the tears stopped being about loss. They became part of her becoming. For so long, she thought love meant giving everything. She poured herself into someone else, her time, her energy, her soul, believing that if she just gave more, tried harder, bent a little further, she'd finally feel whole. That's what we're taught, isn't it? That love completes us, that someone out there holds the missing piece. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. She looked in the mirror one morning, not to fix her makeup, not to hide the sadness, but to really see herself. And what she saw wasn't someone incomplete. What she saw was someone who had always been whole, always enough. Just, She didn't need someone to tell her who she was. She didn't need a title next to her name to feel valuable. She didn't need to be chosen to feel worthy. She had been choosing everyone else for so long. She forgot to choose herself. And once she did, everything changed. She stopped shrinking to fit into someone else's life. She stopped apologizing for being too much or not enough. She realized that real love, the kind that's steady and soft and strong, doesn't come from someone else filling a void. It comes from you standing in your fullness and saying, "And I already am." She didn't lose love. She returned to the love that never left. Her own. Healing didn't happen all at once. It wasn't some perfect moment where everything suddenly made sense. It came slowly, like sunlight slipping through heavy curtains after a long night. Some days felt impossible. She'd smile in public, then fall apart in silence. She'd pretend she was fine, just so no one would ask. But over time, she began to notice small shifts. She no longer reached for her phone out of habit, hoping to feel something. She stopped replaying old memories like a song stuck on repeat. She caught herself laughing again. Really laughing. Not because she was trying to seem okay, but because for a moment she was, and with every small breath, every quiet step forward, the fog started to lift. She began to see things differently. Not just the world, but herself. Version of her that begged for attention, that dimmed her light to keep the peace, that waited to be seen, was fading. In her place, a new version began to emerge. Someone who didn't need permission to exist fully. Someone who didn't need to be told she mattered, because now she knew she did. Clarity came in moments, and stillness, and truth. And as painful as it was to let go of what once felt safe, she realized that the space left behind was making room for something far more honest. She stopped trying to understand why things ended and started focusing on who she was becoming. Used to fill every silence with music, with scrolling, with people, with noise, anything to avoid sitting with the emptiness, because silence felt like loneliness, and loneliness felt like failure. But when everything fell apart, the silence came anyway, uninvited, unavoidable, heavy. At first, it was unbearable. She would wake up to the quiet and want to scream just to feel alive. The nights were the worst, and no distractions, no conversations, just the echo of her own thoughts bouncing off the walls. But slowly, something changed. In that silence, she began to hear something different. Not the voice of doubt or fear, but the voice she had silenced for years, her own. It wasn't loud, it didn't rush in with answers, but it was real, steady, honest. It reminded her of the girl she used to be before she tried to become what someone else wanted. The silence became a mirror. And in it, she saw her truth, raw and untouched. She saw that she didn't need noise to feel worthy. She didn't need validation to exist. In the quiet, she remembered how to breathe, how to feel, how to be. She stopped running. She started listening. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of being alone with herself. She used to think self-love was just bubble baths and pretty quotes, like something you did on weekends when you had time. But real self-love, it's messier, louder, braver, and it doesn't always feel good. And real self-love is looking in the mirror after you've been torn apart and saying, I still choose you. It's setting boundaries that make other people uncomfortable, but keep your heart safe. It's walking away from what hurts, even when part of you wants to stay. It's waking up on the hard days and choosing not to give up on yourself. She had spent so long chasing love in other people that she forgot what it felt like to give it to herself. Not in pieces, not just when she was winning, but fully, even when she felt broken, especially then. One day she stopped asking, oh, will someone love me the way I deserve? And started asking, why don't I? So she started showing up for herself. In the little ways at first, speaking kinder, resting when she needed to, saying no without guilt. But over time, it grew stronger, fierce, solid, unshakable. She didn't wait for someone else to save her. She became the person she needed all along. That's when everything began to change, not because someone chose her, but because she did. She used to question everything. Every word she said, every outfit she wore, every silence she kept. Was I too much? Was I not enough? Is the wrong thing? If I were different, would they have stayed? She twisted herself into smaller shapes, softened her voice, smiled when it hurt, all for the comfort of others, all for the hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally feel like she was enough. But that question, am I enough, never really came from them. It came from a place inside her that had been told to doubt, to shrink, to wait for permission to exist. And then one day, something snapped, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity. She looked around at the pieces of herself she had handed out to people who never deserved them and realized she didn't need fixing. She needed reclaiming. Her worth wasn't something to be earned. It wasn't based on who stayed or who left. It didn't rise when she was praised or fall when she was ignored. Her worth simply was. It was in her breath, her survival, her softness, her strength. It was in how she kept showing up, even when no one clapped. It was in how she chose to heal, even when it would have been easier to stay broken. She stopped performing. She stopped explaining. She stopped asking. And she started knowing. She used to imagine what it would feel like to get even, to be seen again, to prove a point. To walk into a room and have them regret everything they did to her. There was a time when revenge sounded like healing, when success was driven by spite, when she dreamed of becoming someone so untouchable, so radiant, so undeniable, that they'd look back and feel the weight of what they lost. But the truth, that kind of validation fades. It's a high that never lasts on. It still gives power to the pain. So she stopped chasing the applause. She stopped trying to win what she never truly needed. Instead, she chose something quieter, something softer, something real. She chose peace, Betty. Not the kind you fake with a forced smile or pretty captions, but the kind that lives in your bones. The kind that lets you rest at night. Not because everything's perfect, but because you're not carrying what was never yours to hold. Peace looked like no longer reacting. Like not explaining her side of the story anymore. Like no longer checking who was watching or caring who was listening. Peace was walking past the memories without flinching. Peace was finally realizing she didn't need closure from anyone because she had given it to herself. Oh, and the most powerful part, she didn't rise out of revenge. She rose because she was ready. Ready to stop surviving and start living. Ready to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer a bandage. Ready to stop turning herself into a battlefield just to prove she was strong. Peace didn't mean she forgot what happened. It meant she refused to let it define her anymore. And in that peace, she became untouchable, not because she hardened, but because she softened without falling apart. Because she let go without losing herself. Because she no longer needed to be seen to feel real. She wasn't waiting to be missed. She wasn't hoping for regret. She had something far better. She had herself. And that was more than enough. So, no, this isn't a story about losing someone. This is a story about remembering who she is. A woman who rose without resentment, who bloomed without needing permission, who broke and didn't stay broken. She let go of what dimmed her light, and in the process, she became it. She found her rhythm. She found her voice. She found her voice. She found her power. And most of all, she found herself. Not the version shaped by someone else, but the one who had been there all along, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be heard, waiting to be loved by her. And this time, she won't let herself go. Not ever again.